Chapter 18, Fellowship of Russian Entrepreneurs. The idea of a fellowship meant that it would be open to any entrepreneurs who had been active in the Russian market for at least a year and were sincerely striving to develop honest relationships not only with each other but with their clients and employees. Representatives of various nonprofit societies tried to persuade me that today's entrepreneurs were cool to the idea of any form of organization, that the age of faith-based euphoria had passed, and that membership in societies one could join simply by paying a modest fee had diminished catastrophically. They argued furthermore that the idea of organizing a fellowship with additional requirements involved the ethical standards of both the entrepreneur and the enterprise was simply absurd. My old friend Artem Tarasov, having heard about my arrival in Moscow and what I was up to, came to one of the round tables. He set to work on drafting documents, including an appeal to entrepreneurs. He laid out several thousands of dollars so that I could make up glossy brochures and give out to delegates at Small Business Congress being organized in Moscow. Footnote, Small Business Congress, a reference to the first All-Russian Congress of Small Business Representatives held on the 19th to 21st of February in 1996 in the prestigious Kremlin Palace of Congresses in Moscow. This high-profile event, organized by several government agencies and the Chamber of Commerce of the Russian Federation, featured an address by Russian President Boris Yeltsin. To the entrepreneurs' disappointment, however, many of the promises of the government support to small businesses voiced during the Congress were never actually fulfilled. End footnote. But the Congress organizers decided not to allow any brochures on the fellowship to be handed out, no doubt fearing competition from us. As a result, secretarial staff and students positioned themselves just outside the entrances to the Rossiya Hotel, footnote, a large hotel complex in downtown Moscow across from the Kremlin and Red Square overlooking Moscow River. They stood there withstanding both the cold and attempts to chase them away by the militia, who thought some kind of illegal selling might be taking place. Artem Tarasov still managed to take a package of brochures into the Kremlin Palace of Congresses, where the Congress was being held, though unfortunately only a rather small quantity. The operation we had placed so many of our hopes on ended in failure. Organizing the fellowship was proving to be an impossibility. The difficulty was that getting the necessary information out to all the entrepreneurs across the country required a huge outlay of rubles on printing and postage costs, since favorable responses were coming in from only 10% of the people we managed to reach. The required funds were simply not available. Besides, the League executive kept back a portion of the membership fees as office space rent, as they had no other source of funds. Sensing some sort of snag, the League stopped giving out money for organizational expenses altogether, in spite of the fact that the membership fees had been specifically earmarked for organizational expenses. The League needed us to use the entrepreneur's membership fee just to cover operating costs, they explained. Then they began holding back wage payments for the secretarial staff. I was obliged to vacate the League's premises, leaving behind my second computer, which had been purchased with funds from the entrepreneurs who had joined the fellowship. How come? Queried the students in bewilderment, students who had spent hours working out computer programs at their own expense. We've been doing the work which this non-profit organization, according to its constitution, is supposed to carry out, and here they're treating us like tenants and spitting on the entrepreneurs in the process. The League executive argued, the office rent must be paid. With what was left of the secretarial staff, I tried to carry on the work out of one of the entrepreneurial trades union offices, but the same situation repeated itself there. After getting to know the leaders of several nonprofit organizations, I suddenly realized that they all had titles, but no membership. something like the so-called sofa parties. Footnote: sofa parties, political parties or non-profit societies with the trappings of a registered organization, but created merely to advance the interests of one individual or small group, existing only for the benefit of their executives. While this was not true of the Farmers and Peasants Association, headed by Vladimir Bashmaknikov, and there may be other exceptions, this was the general state of affairs at the time. Even today, there is no nonprofit organization in Russia bringing together any significant number of entrepreneurs, and those that do exist are of the sofa party variety. Why? Among the possible causes, I would not include the anonymity of membership fees. For some reason, it always happens that once an executive body is created, it starts making decisions on behalf of entrepreneurs without consulting the majority. Walking away from the trades union office, I now found myself without any means of communication and without anything to live on. Artem Tarasov had by this time immigrated to London. He had tried to get himself on the ballot for Russian presidency and had spent billions of rubles collecting the required signatures. But when the Central Election Committee invalidated most of the signatures, Artem was obliged to look after repairing his own financial affairs. The local residents working on the secretariat, not receiving any pay, were obliged to quit. I was left all alone. Or rather, I thought I had been left all alone. But 3 Moscow students weren't about to abandon the work that they had started: Anton, Artem, and Lyosha. Anton actually used his own holiday savings to pay the monthly rent on an apartment for me. They were willing to wait until I sought and found a way out of my present circumstances and could continue my work on creating the fellowship. They had got caught up by the whole idea. They believed in it, but I could see nothing ahead but a dead end. It was right at this time that some news arrived from Novosibirsk.